their needs are being
met.
taken care of
Yeah.
or being met. The other thing is
Powerful.
this notion that people come to work for you and they're your team and you
Right.
want to hold on tight to them
Yeah.
is a faulty idea. Because look at all of us, make a stop in our career in a given organization or a given manager, and then we move on to something. And sometimes it's our choosing, and sometimes it's not our choosing. It's a reorg or a, 2.3 million salespeople in the U.S. have been laid off in the last 2 years, and that's huge.
Hello, friends. Welcome back to the REA-Van. Today's guest is my friend Helen Fanucci. Helen is a sales leader, an author, a board member who's redefining what it means to lead in the modern workplace. With decades of experience navigating high-performance tech teams, Helen is the author of Love Your Team, a survival guide for sales managers in a hybrid world we're all living in today. Her work challenges the traditional playbook, arguing that care, connection, and trust aren't soft, they're strategic. This conversation is for you if you've ever led a team or wanted to keep your best people from walking somewhere else. Helen, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me.
Yeah.
And it's so great to be here in your hood.
Yeah, this is the neighbor. We're literally in my backyard, and there's no better place to do it.
I know.
So we're hanging out, we're getting toasty, and yeah, welcome to the show. Welcome to the van. This is so great. I, not only have I enjoyed your book, but I've also just sort of enjoyed your journey. I know we've sort of crossed paths a few times in the book writing world, but now that the book is out and doing things, you were in town doing a talk, or you were on a panel
A couple weeks ago. Yeah, I did a talk at 10 West conference. And it was, I think, the 10th year of 10 West in downtown Tucson.
So cool.
On using AI for sales.
Yeah.
So that was the theme of the talk, and it was for entrepreneurs and leaders who are trying to figure out what this AI thing is all about.
Yeah, I love this because I feel like there's not a conversation that goes by today, especially online or really anywhere, that we don't involve AI.
It's true.
And I think it's been there a long time. We just now, I feel like now we can really use the tools and use it as such. But then it's how do we bring it into helping my team? How do I do it in the sales? It's like this malleable piece of clay. How do I introduce it to these elements, but without, of course, the ethics, the morals, the dynamics, the making sure it feels human. And there's so many interesting sort of paths around AI, which we'll get into in a bit. But I want to talk about first, you titled your book, Love Your Team. It's not a word that usually hear in sales. What made you realize love had to be a part of the leadership conversation?
Such a good question. So in July of 21, in the little window when we thought, it was safe to have in-person events, I was speaking at a conference for sales leaders on leading high-performance teams and what it takes to do that. And what was authentic to me was saying, love your team. And I thought, I can't put that on the slides. Actually, support your team. That's a more, and I thought,
acceptable.
No, I'm going to put love. This is my truth. This is what's authentic for me. And I told the audience, I said, look, I got to tell you, I'm really nervous about this, using the word love in business. But it resonated so well. I got such great feedback that I thought, you know what? This is what I'm going with it.
Yeah.
And
Perfect.
When I was Googling Love Your Team and stuff before I finalized the title of my book, I got, self-help, personal development kind of, responses. So I did the subtitle, A Survival Guide for Sales Managers in a Hybrid World to kind of, be clear that this is really a business book.
Yeah.
And it's literally a how-to survival guide.
Yeah.
Think about it like, if you're climbing a mountain and you have something happens to a buddy and you have a first aid book, you're going to go to, cut their leg or whatever, and you're going to figure out what you need to do, or if they are experiencing heat exhaustion. Sure. So you go to the chapter that addresses a situation that you as a manager have, and there's 17 chapters dedicated to what kinds of, how to master the kinds of conversations leaders need to have with their team. And the reason I focused on that is as I reflected on what I do, like the core thing that I do as a sales leader, is I'm always having conversations with my team and others. So I go, okay, well, what are those conversations? So I started like taking a note, like, all right, what am I talking about? Are we talking about the competition? Are we talking about performance? What are we, are we talking about deal strategy? And so I distilled it into 17 core conversations. And anyway, then that's how the book came about. That's how it's structured.
Yeah.
And it launched November 1st, 2022. So tomorrow is 2.5 years from the launch date, which is crazy.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
I love that. And it felt like yesterday, but it's still very relevant because the conversations are, they're sort of timeless, right? In a way, they're timeless because we're still navigating this hybrid world. We're still very much navigating. Look, if you're going to have a sales team, you're going to have a team of any kind.
Right.
The idea of what love means in this scenario is very interesting. And I love that you brought that not only to the conversation, but to that talk, but then kind of kept brewing on it and growing it into this book, the survival guide, which is really powerful. So you say the top seller is now the top customer. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, so that's good. So think about this. So I focus on B2B sales, business to business sales, so not business to consumer.
Sure.
And in business to business sales, trust is the currency of B2B business. That you're not able to actually sell something unless the buyer or the buying organization is trusting you as a seller and trusting your company. And think about it, because in an enterprise sales situation, the buyer is risking their career. If they make a bad decision, it could hurt their reputation, their promotion, their career. Where us as a consumer, if we make a bad purchase, let's say we buy a car and it turns out to be a lemon and we trade it back, and okay, we lose $10,000. I don't know whatever it is, but money is less critical for people typically than their career. And so one of the things managers must do is they must build trust with their team. So I go through that in a lot of detail in the book. And so the reason I say that is because your team members are the ones that are the performers, if you will. They're the ones that are delivering, if it's sales or delivering revenue. And if you're not supporting them and reducing, friction in the sales process or using your positional power as a leader to help them get higher level conversations with prospects, then you're really not supporting them in a way that you could be. And so the other piece about it too is that the sellers, if they don't feel that they can trust you as a manager, and if their career ambitions aren't being served by working for you, I would say their life ambitions, because it's not always career is the top thing. Could be maximizing money. I had a seller who he was living in India, and he wanted to move to the U.S.
Right.
So I helped make that happen.
Wow.
And so a manager must find out, okay, what do your team members care about and how can you support them? And if that individual isn't feeling served by working for you as a leader or working for your company, they're at risk of leaving.
Yeah.
And a manager can't make their quota if their top performers leave. And so that's why the orientation of your seller is now your number one customer. It's the manager's number one customer.
Right.
Because that is, and managers typically don't think that way. They got promoted and they're managing and doing what they're doing, but they're not orienting sufficiently to really understanding what their team members care about, paying attention to them, having regular conversations, not just about business stuff, but about the individual and what they're working on and how they can support them. So that's what I mean by the number one customer. And so the manager is literally demonstrating the trust equation, like building trust with a team, that they're expecting their team members to build with their customers.
So powerful.
And so that's really the crux. Like the Love Your Team is actually a Love Your Team system and approach to sales leadership. And I picked sales leadership because that's my jam, but it does apply to other, it's kind of, I say it's common sense, but it turns out it's not common
Not so common.
practice.
Yeah.
And so, but it can apply to other, organizations, but I focus on sales to make sure I have a clearly defined audience that I'm really targeting for the book and message, and it's in my wheelhouse.
That's so powerful, because I can't agree more with the ideas of trust being sort of at the core of not only what you're talking about, really even, I would say even B2C today, right? Because people, that element, let's be honest, like we've all been online, we've all shopped for things, we've all been bombarded with salespeople or or marketing or ads. My God, right? So much so that it's hard to differentiate like what's real, what's not, what's fishy, what's scammy, what doesn't feel right. And on top of that, am I being listened to? Am I being heard? Do I feel seen? So that idea of you like seeing that manager who was like, look, the money's great, all this stuff, but I want to give my family, an opportunity to grow up in to grow through the U.S., to come to the U.S. and give my family a better opportunity than I had, which is what my dad had. It was like this, like, how do I position them now to give my family the best shot at life, right? And I think that was so powerful in recognizing, like, growing up here was like, sometimes it's not just the money or just like the career path. Sometimes it's, can I get the thing that I really need, and can I be open to express that to you, right? As my person. And really, that's almost like a love language in of itself, where you're really tuned in and you care, and there's a strategy behind that too, because if you can open up that door, right, and help that person with that very thing, that deep desire, then they're probably going to work a lot harder for you. Not because you want them to work harder, but they're gonna show up differently. I guess,
their needs are being taken care of, or being met. The other thing is this notion that people come to work for you and they're your team and you want to hold on tight to them is a faulty idea. Because look at all of us, make a stop in our career in a given organization or a given manager, and then we move on to something. And sometimes it's our choosing, and sometimes it's not our choosing. It's a reorg or a 2.3 million salespeople in the U.S. have been laid off in the last 2 years, and that's huge. So people are I view them as my team is making a stop on their journey of their career, working for me. How can I support them? And then the other thing is, okay, they get promoted and they move on. Great. And then I end up having a reputation as being a great manager to work for. And then it's easier for me to attract top talent.
Yeah.
So let me pivot for a minute. So when I launched the book, it was really hard to find great sellers, and the individual had, I would say, the power, and companies were struggling to hire talent. And it used to be before COVID that you competed with other companies in a geography for the top talent, but in a hybrid world you're competing with every company in the world for the top talent, because when you can work from home, literally people can walk out the door without taking a single step. They just pivot to another company. So it was much more competitive. And now, at least in tech, there's a lot of, as I said, 2.3 million sellers got laid off in the last 2 years. Now it has shifted. But so one of the things that I'm doing is I'm really tying the Love Your Team system to high performance, because every company needs to have high sales performance. Sales numbers always go up. And one of the things that's happening right now is, I hear, gosh, my sellers don't know how to forecast, or I keep on missing my forecast. Well, maybe their sales process and how they're qualifying is faulty. but maybe the seller doesn't trust their manager and they're not telling the truth. And they're robbing the manager of the opportunity to help them get a deal back on track. So there's a lot of dynamics going on that have shifted, and so I've had to pivot a bit my focus and message and tie it much more to hardcore business results and high performance.
Yeah, that's so, I feel like a lot of people, even in B2B, when I owned my print shop, I was like, sales and marketing is our biggest thing. But what is it? What does it mean for this sort of industry for me, right?
Yes.
And I think what I love about your work here is that people don't really fully comprehend the importance and the depth of a good sales manager, a sales leader, and even the sales representatives themselves. Like, we have this weirdly, I feel like as average sort of individuals in the world, right? We have this very limited understanding what a salesperson does, right? It's like, here's a thing, buy it, sign the contract, whatever, right? But it's so much more than that. It's so, it's complicated. It's very complicated, especially in B2B and in tech, where there's millions of dollars flowing back and forth, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars, and you have people who need to lead people in a very authentic way. But I think personally, once I started leading myself and really setting an example for my little sales team back when I had a little print shop, because we were kind of B2B too, right? We had to go work with other companies.
Right.
And again, very small scale in comparison to what you were doing. But it's kind of the same philosophy. People would be like, oh, I got hung up on, or I got whatever. I'm like, dude, that's okay. It's not a personal thing.
Right.
Or that's the simple stuff, right? Or this deal's going to go through, it's great, it's big, it's our biggest thing. And then it doesn't, and I'm like, that's okay. It's like, it's really, I had to learn to sort of manage my emotions in those
good
things.
One.
Yeah.
A good one.
Yeah, like so.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of where I want to go. Like, how does a sales leader, I guess, in a way, help not only for themselves, like manage their emotions, manage the ups and downs and being laid off, whatever, all these things that are happening, especially in our tech world today. How does one manage their emotion? How can they help their team sort of manage those emotions?
I love that question. Yeah. So I think one of the things is making it safe to tell the truth. Real conversations. Let bad news travel fast. Because one of the things I do when I introduce myself to a new team, because mostly when I get hired or I'm an entrepreneur now, but I would take on a team that already existed. I didn't hire from scratch my whole team.
Sure.
So I would go through, I tell them a bit about myself, fun facts, family, whatever, my career. But then I talk about my leadership principles, like what I care about and how I want to be interacted with. So, authentic conversations. Bad news travels fast. People first. You guys are the ones that are leading you're the account execs, you're owning your business, but then follow that up with actions that actually empower them rather than, oh, you're meeting with a CFO, well, let me take that meeting. No, let them take that meeting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, empower.
So empower, and literally sometimes I would be in the background on a video conference, and I would turn my screen on, my picture, and I would take notes for my seller because I wanted them to be present in the conversation. And I would take notes, action items, and then it also gave me the opportunity to coach them after the fact. But getting back to your question on emotions, so have an authentic, safe dialogue with people and that they feel comfortable. You can't force that on them. Like, when I took on a team, this one guy says, well, I don't need you. I don't need to talk to you. I said, well, my preference is that we meet every other week. He goes, nah, I don't want to do that. I said, okay, how about once a month? So he goes, okay, once a month. And then you earn the trust over time through your actions and actually what you do to support that individual. The other thing is that's so crucial that I think managers don't do well is having clear expectations, outcome-based expectations and goals for their team, and let them perform and deliver those expectations. And yes, checkpoint, but don't get in the middle of it. Oh, so let me give you some examples. Okay, revenue, close $1 million of revenue this year. Well, revenue is a lagging performance indicator. So how are you going to checkpoint to make sure they're on track? So you might say you need to have at least 3x pipeline coverage, meaning 3 million in your pipeline so that, 1/3 would close. Or if the company's close ratio is 20%, you need a 5x, or whatever the right thing is.
Right.
And then that's one example. Yeah. And then also I would have non-quantitative metrics, like, work well across the team, because in enterprise selling's a team sport.
Yeah.
Don't be a jerk. I wouldn't use those words, but for example,
Right.
make sure people want to work with you.
Right.
And then when you see gaps as a manager in performance, like, address them right away. Talk to the individual, find out, hey, this is what I'm seeing. What are you seeing? What's your perspective here? Because one of the emotional things that's very, very difficult for managers is when performance spins out of control. Yeah. They haven't addressed it, and then they just want the person to leave. So a performance conversation can be matter of fact.
Right.
It doesn't have to be a big emotional thing. It's like, here's what I'm seeing.
And
even putting people on a PIP.
Yeah.
The other thing that I've learned over time is if it's not working for me as a manager, it's not working for them as an individual. And you're actually doing them a disservice by not highlighting and bringing it forward, because they're suffering in the role.
Right.
And maybe there's a way that can be addressed by changing the role or helping them in some way, helping them find a new role. And maybe it's just, okay, this isn't working, you need to leave the company. And I've actually had people come back and say, I'm so glad, that you forced the issue, because I'm so much happier now in my new thing.
Right.
Which is, people don't think that way.
No.
So there's a lot of emotion that comes into play, and just like competence, practice being calm, take a deep breath, all those good things. Don't let yourself get run ragged. Take care of yourself.
Yeah.
And that also comes into play.
Yeah.
So model those behaviors. It can be very stressful if you're not making your quota and it's impossible to make the quota, and maybe the business strategy has to change. There's a lot of things that can come into play. Like right now, emails don't work, because AI is clogging the airways and spamming with email. And so even a really personalized email doesn't get responded to, because it's viewed as just adding to the noise. So a company that has a strategy of growing pipeline through emails is in trouble. And it's not those individuals doing the emailing, it is the fundamental of the leadership strategy has to change to adapt to current times.
Right.
So that's one of the things I talk to sales leaders about, is new strategies for building pipeline, for prospecting, that don't rely on email and don't rely on advertising, because inbounds to websites aren't working because people are using AI for search, not Google. So the whole dynamics are changing.
Yeah, the search everywhere optimization of ChatGPT and others. Yeah, that's so powerful. And I love your foresight in seeing the dynamics not only shift, but how do we manage that? It's not necessarily not working because I'm not doing the work. It's perhaps not working because we need a different strategy.
Right.
And that's so powerful to just, one, be open with potentially your manager or whoever you're working with. And that's the important feedback. So I got some feedback from a client of mine that I work with. Shout out to Greg. He knows who he is. So Greg is a phenomenal leader and coach, and he brings up this idea of the best way to give feedback is actually to go out and get feedback. So go to your team, from the lowest to the highest and say, hey, what can I do to improve? What can I, like all these kinds of questions. And that sort of opens up that tension, right? And say, oh, this person, like he wants to hear me out, And if you do it over and over again, they're going to say, well, what can I do to improve? And then that's where you can come in and sort of introduce your thoughts about, oh, maybe you should do this or think about that or whatever, not should, right? He hates the word should. So something he made me really think about. And I love that because when we think about feedback, right, it's something that we want to give to someone else because we need them to improve. But in reality, if you just reverse it and say, hey, what can I work on to release that tension? And they're like, well, maybe it is something that I'm doing that's not helping them. And that's the exact feedback I needed to hear as a leader, right? And that's so powerful. That changed my whole dynamic of how to think about things, how to like see people and see their strengths and say, you know what, those things are in there, but maybe I'm not seeing it. And by them telling me, maybe a light bulb can go off, and then that conversation can happen, and those meetups can happen a lot more easier when you do your quarterly or monthly or weekly. It doesn't feel like there's, oh man, I have to like say things that are going to make me feel uncomfortable or make that person uncomfortable. Like, no, we've already had some cool like side conversations that were actually very heartwarming, and even if they gave me feedback that I can't deploy or whatever, at least they felt heard. At least they felt seen. And I think, with the title of your book, which I just love, that's love. That's the act of love, right? It's like, it's a relationship. It's a dynamic. It's two ways, not one way. And I think it happens within people and then outside the companies and with relationships. It's really a very malleable state that you can, go back and forth with. And it's like, they have the chocolate chips, you have the dough, man. You gotta, it's a back and forth.
You're talking my language now. Chocolate chip cookies, yeah.
It's my best. It's my favorite.
So one of the things I do that might not be intuitive is this bi-weekly, every other week, one-on-one with my team.
Sure.
It's their agenda. It's not my agenda. It's
Right.
their agenda. So from the get-go, they're talking about what they want to talk about and how I can support them.
Yeah.
So I set up that dynamic.
Yeah.
And then if I have agenda items, I'll let them know, and maybe we extend it from 30 minutes to 45 minutes because I need to also let them know if there's, something that's not working, or, hey,
Sure.
I got this feedback from one of your teammates, how you're seeing this. But that setting it up that they are the ones that are setting the agenda also creates a dynamic where, you're all automatically supporting their agenda.
That's so powerful.
I didn't really think about that until you said the
Well, you're doing it though. That's the thing. That's the act of living it. That you don't even so this is why I love having these conversations. Most of people like yourself, you're literally living that world. You are enacting these things. So sometimes to even talk about them feels like, well, isn't this a no-brainer kind of thing? And you're like, well, not everybody thinks about that. Not everybody thinks about it this way. Not everybody has applied this thing that they're good at over here and applied it over here. And that's the beautiful dynamic of these conversations. My goal, one of my favorite things my dad used to say is that it's just like, create the conditions for reminders because you're forgetful.
I love that.
Yeah.
That's so good.
You're forgetful. I'm forgetful. Everyone's forgetful, no matter how good their memory is.
Yeah.
And I'm a creative, so I'm always like bouncing around like my little creative world, and so I tend to forget things. But when I set up my reminders, it really brings me back to focus.
Yeah.
Brings me back to focus. So I love that. And I feel like that's what these conversations are for me, and hopefully other people, is that they're reminders.
Yeah, for
so
sure.
I want to talk a little bit about not only the success of the book, but how do you, as an author, as an entrepreneur, speaker, consultant, that many people who watch the show are, how do you use the book in ways to market yourself, in ways to, do you send it out? Do you package it beautifully and send it somewhere? Or do you send it out in like packages of like 50 to how do you use your book? Everybody does it a little different way. And I'm always interested in how people like yourself.
Yeah, so when I get asked to speak at a conference, if it's a physical conference, which sometimes happens, then I will bake into the conference that they get the book and make it available to all of the conference attendees. So that's one way that I use it, so that then they have that, because it's usually a companion, if you will, that goes along with my talk.
Yeah.
The other thing is that it has, my book is like, it's the best resume business card, like, you know what I mean, and people will like, wow, and I love the cover because it always gets a reaction.
It's simple.
And one of the things I did before, no, I didn't do it before the book launch. My husband told me, you should do this, and I didn't do it, but now I have a business card with the book cover on one side, and then the other side my contact details. So sometimes when we're out and about, like, I always keep them in my purse, and then, you know, my husband's like, oh, do you have a card? And then they look at the cover and they go, oh my gosh, this is like great. So that has spoken. It's a
conversation starter.
It's a conversation starter, and that has spoken volumes.
That's awesome.
So I had a call earlier this week with somebody that, we want to do leadership training. You know, do you do this stuff? And I said, look, let me send you a copy of my book, because it will guide your evaluation of my proposal. And so my proposal is going to be tied to things in the book, specific things, and I'm going to give him some choices of what he wants to prioritize of different topics, but then he'll have the book to go, okay, this is what she means by that. So that's one way. And I was introduced to him through a friend of mine who knew that I do leadership training. Sales leadership training. I also had the opportunity to speak with a portfolio companies of a venture capital firm a couple weeks ago, and so that's all virtual. So I went through, it was actually about creating sustainable, predictable sales performance. And I started off with, you know, some sales leadership principles, because it's the foundation. The team and how you set up the team for success and how you manage the team is a foundation for success in sales. But it's insufficient if you have a terrible sales process, if you have a bad way to go to market. And from my point of view, there's nothing more strategic for a business than choosing who you want to be your customer. So what markets do you want to go after? Is it by industry? What size company? And then who are the individuals in that company whose job it is to solve the problems that your solution solves? So I went through all of that with them, because those are the kinds of things that entrepreneurs or business to business folks need to figure out and think about.
And be very clear on.
And then get the feedback if it's working or not. And so here's a spoiler alert. So the way to do that now that is actually cold calling. Cold calling is making a resurgence. And cold calling isn't about ambushing people and then telling them your value prop. Cold calling is actually an emotional journey that you're taking the person you ambush on, and it can be completed in 30 seconds. And it's about setting up a meeting, you know, and just saying enough that piques their curiosity to set up a meeting. And then you get recordings. You get recordings of your discovery calls. You put them into, and this is the killer app for AI that people are not doing and underappreciating. You take the conversation your team is having, the cold calls or discovery calls, and you put that in AI and you find out, is my message resonating? What's the competition? What's their timing to purchase my product or service? You can find out all sorts of things, including, of course, the skills of your sellers. But
that's so powerful.
It's really a pivot is required to break through the noise and reach people. And yes, people are picking up the phone, and you need to have a calling platform so your sellers aren't taking time to navigate corporate phone trees and things like that. But it is possible. And right now, I think it's the only way forward because AI has corrupted digital forms of communication.
You're so right. I mean, every day you get messages on LinkedIn, every day you get emails, you get and you just feel it. You can feel the generic aspects to them, and that kind of breaks my heart because, and then a lot of stuff you don't even see because it ends up in your spam or whatever. But you're right. There's a lot of phone calls that are coming in. Even with my phone, I don't typically answer. I let it go to voicemail, and if it's a good voicemail, that's my thing. I'm like, I will listen to the voicemail on my time. But if it's a good voicemail, I'll probably call you back. You know what I mean? Even if you're a friend, I probably won't tell you. You know what I'm saying? Like, if it's a good voicemail, if something's important or you pique my curiosity, like you said, I'll probably call you back. And I've had that actually a few times of people being interested in like helping me do leads or do whatever, you know. Like,
yeah, so I'm on a board of a theater in Seattle.
Oh, cool.
A musical theater called Fifth Avenue Theater, and we have a gala next month.
Okay.
So I was calling subscribers a couple days ago, inviting them to the
Yeah.
and using the phone, practice what I
Using
preach,
what you preach,
phone.
yeah.
So I loaded up, everyone's, and so just to give you a feel, I dropped in 50 minutes 65 voicemails.
Wow.
Because I have a pre-recorded thing.
Sure.
It took me probably 10 takes to do a tight 27-second thing that had action, who I am, why I was calling. Anyway, so 65 voicemails left, and then I talked to about 11 people.
Yeah.
So that's kind of some stats there. And they didn't have to call me back. I left them my number if they wanted to.
But they got
but
the
also,
information.
they got the information. I'm calling to invite them. I'm a new board member, and I'd love to meet you.
So
and
cool.
Here's how you get tickets.
And it makes them feel special. You know what's worked for me is voice messaging. So like I leave a voice. It's just like a voicemail, really. But it's instead. So I'll send it through email or I'll send it through LinkedIn or whatever. And it's just the people that I like know and like have comment or engaged with or want to get to know more or like want to learn about them or invite them to the podcast. I just started sending like voice messages.
Yes.
And like those get a little bit of a better response, I found. And people actually like them because they're like, I don't see the text. I have to kind of hear this and want to hear this, you know?
Yes.
So I think that's very powerful. I love all these tactics. They're not really like basic tactics. They're legit gems. And I appreciate this because you went from very high level B2B, like thinking, structurally for big business, all the way down to, look, pick up the phone, have a strategy to do that. Here's how to do that. I love that so much. So it's incredible how you've not only jam-packed your book with all these insights and made a survival guide that I think is clearly very useful because you not only use this stuff, you're sharing a lot of it, but you've also used your book in a way to help you develop those conversations, create those conversations, bring those opportunities to yourself so that you can, send out those proposals, send out those, things that you really want to be a part of, not just as a board member, but potentially as a consultant to help others. And that's really powerful.
I pivot based on what comes my way.
Yeah,
So, I took last year I was doing some, what I call it, drive-by consulting, like these projects.
I love that.
And I thought, I don't want to do that. I want to work with the leadership team on, leadership capabilities, effectiveness. Yeah. And then if there's gaps in their sales process or whatever, or how they're reaching out to their customers, I have ideas. I mean, one of the things is I am a MIT trained engineer. I love technology, but I love the people side more because technology never transformed a business. It's always people all the way down. 100%. And so, there's a lot in my tool bag that I can use to pivot to what is needed. And so, for example, when I do a conference or I do the talking to the portfolio companies of the VC, I get the list of people who registered, so then I can follow up with them. I can call them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, and see if that resonated with them. So I do follow up.
Yeah.
I don't do a lot of email outreach because it's not really my jam.
Sure.
My website needs to be redone, so I want to talk to you about that because it was a certain way. Sure. And honestly, here's one of the things that I feel like I did wrong. Let me talk about some mistakes.
Sure.
So I had a podcast in early 2022 on Love Your Team because I knew the name of the book, but I hadn't launched the book yet. And that was great. And then I ended the podcast and I because I ended up hiring a company called Kitcaster when the book launched, and I was a guest on other people's podcasts.
Sure.
So I did that. So, but when I was doing all the podcasts, and I had a woman do a website for me, really great, and she's a podcast person,
Sure.
you know, kind of a, what do you call it, editor and all that stuff. But it was all on WordPress, and now it's so hard. I can't personally change it effectively.
Yep.
So I want to re-platform that on like Squarespace, change the messaging because
There you
it's
go.
a 2-year-old website.
Yep.
I got advice, you know, maybe 6 months ago that since my business consulting is changing and I'm pivoting, that I really need to, you know, have a website that can be more dynamically updated.
Yeah.
So that's something that I'm need help with, because every minute I spend in my business doing websites or stuff like
Sure.
that is a minute that I'm not talking to people or doing a proposal that
Right.
is generating business.
Yeah.
And so
You're right, and I love that you brought that up, because it's not a mistake, right? It's something that that's just where you were
Right.
at that point. And as you evolve and grow, as we all do,
Right.
we all do. I always tell people, like, that's what I do for a living, and my website's changed like 15 times, like, as grown.
right.
Because it's not if you think about it as, like, it's not a website, it's a garden. It's like my best metaphor, right? Is that, hint hint, for my next book called The Garden Warrior. But it's a garden because you tend it, you grow it, you
Right.
change it, you evolve it, you add resources. I think a great website is a great sales rep, right?
Yes.
It's
yes.
a great sales rep. It does a lot of work for you, does some heavy lifting. It shows people what you could really do, shows who you are. It shows, doesn't just tell, right? And it leaves room for growth and opportunities and change. But people are going to check you out. And guess what? When you go ChatGPT someone today, I tell people all the time this. I'm like, it doesn't matter if you're a solopreneur, author, whatever. People are going to Google you because trust, right? And today, it's not just Googling you, it's ChatGPTing you, which that thing's going to scrape the internet to find your name and find everything related to you and what you do and
Right.
who you are. And so at the top of that list, it better be something you control. And that usually is your website or, especially as a professional, right? Your LinkedIn profile, your, those social platforms, your blog or podcast. So you want to make sure all those things are not only well developed and like laid out, but also living. They're alive. They have stuff that dropped yesterday or the last week.
Yeah.
So a lot of people, to no fault of their own, because you're busy, you like doing the thing, right? You like getting in front of the people, the thing, whatever that thing is. Those people are like, what is it going to take to get you to do the thing? And then how much were you willing to invest in other people doing these other things for you?
Yes.
And making sure that those things are done well.
Yes.
So that when you do appear, or when that person is Googling you, especially during a sales call, how many times has that happened?
Yeah.
Like for you, like when, you get a sales call or whatever, and you just start Googling this person randomly, right? And you're like, or ChatGPT, like, who is this person? Like, what's coming up? Can I trust them? Is this conversation going to go anywhere? Are they legit to what they do? And people, I'm like, as we go further into the future and more AI and more all of this stuff, people, it's going to get harder and harder to believe people, right? I mean, they're just passing a bill about deep fakes, right? Like, this is serious. Like, they're taking your appearance and now mimicking you, doing other things, and that's serious, right? And so I'm a believer in like owning your name, your brand, not just domain, but really owning your personality now, owning your sort of all of these things, and of course what you do. So yeah, I think we all, even myself, right? I'm always learning about the best practices of marketing and personal branding to wrap it around this idea of love and trust, and like really authentic as far as who you are and what you do, but why you do it. Right. Why you're actually there and who you've done this with.
Right.
I think that's important. So as an author, I always tell this to our amazing audience, and as an author, you're an author-preneur. You have to think about what you do in a way of like business. And that business needs a strategy, and it needs a team, and it needs, like the sales, the marketing, like all these other little components. And I think they're very important. So good on you for at least like being aware that those components not only matter, but they also can shape the perception of how people want to work
Right,
with you.
they'll check me out, and I don't feel great right now about my website. So it's undermining my brand.
Mm-hmm.
It's potentially undermining the trust equation because I present myself one way and then I have this other thing. So it's one of those things I've got to address.
Yeah.
And
it matters to you because guess what? I'm willing to bet that it matters to how you perceive who you're working with.
Sure.
Right?
For sure.
Because if you see them on LinkedIn talking about this stuff and you go to their website, like, wait, there's something conflicting here. I just want to get clear before we go forward.
Right.
Right. And that's very important for that sales conversation, really.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So, okay. So back to this idea of, okay, so there's authors, there's amazing people out there that can take in consideration, like, their ever evolving brand, if you will, their online presence.
Yes.
How do you intend in the next, 3, 6 months, a year, how do you, are you planning another book? Or do you keep planning to just get this one out there further? What's next for Helen Fanucci?
Not planning another book,
Okay.
although my daughter has proposed that we do Love Your Team for, millennials, Gen Z, etc.
Oh, I love that. Okay.
etc. And so we actually have, we have a Google Drive where we're trading ideas.
Yeah.
She's having her second child at the end of June,
so cool.
so she's kind of busy with that. So I think, I think that that's on hold for a bit. But I really feel like I haven't monopolized my book. I haven't really leveraged it enough. So I started doing executive coaching for like chief revenue officers, and then I ended up kind of pivoting and doing some other stuff. And now I need to get back to really actually double down on my book. 'Cause in fact, my husband was just kind of talking to me about this a couple of days ago.
Yeah.
And he's like, look, you've developed this thing. You really haven't leveraged it. I don't have a, what should I say? I don't have a training program that I rinse and repeat. I do it bespoke.
Right.
But I have all these modules that I can put together, and I haven't really done that to think it through well enough.
Yeah.
I don't market myself sufficiently for keynotes at sales kickoff meetings.
Sure.
Which
you could be fantastic at.
So that could be my people. Also, I'm a limited partner in 3 venture capital firms, meaning I'm an investor, and I haven't put together my board resume for them. So, in fact, I was writing these things like these are like these huge opportunities that are just sitting there to take advantage of, and I haven't done that. So I really need to get a bit more focused and serious about leveraging the book. And
well, thank you for being so honest and open about these things. I really appreciate that, because I feel like we all need, even myself, and I have a mentor, Greg, shout out to Greg, who really helps me see those things that I'm not necessarily avoiding. It's just that they need to be worked through. Mm-hmm. And I need a day, I need an hour, and he helped me take most of Fridays. I would say, after 10 o'clock, I am open to work on my thing, on my business, on my podcast.
Yes.
On the thing that I love, that I know moves the needle forward.
Yes.
Right? And I can't even tell you since the beginning of the year how much I look forward to Fridays. Because they're my day. Right?
Yes.
And they're the day that I get to, that thing I've been kind of putting off, the resume, whatever it is, let me actually tackle it today. Let me just work on it. Let me work through it. And when you don't have the calls and you don't have and you're going kind of into the weekend anyway.
Yeah.
So I realized those sales meetups, and they're great, but a lot of people sometimes they don't show up for them. It's Friday. It's kind of a weekend at that point. I'm like, you know what? Let me just dedicate Fridays to working on the thing. But I needed a mentor. I needed someone, accountability partner, if you will, someone that remind me of that.
Yep.
Set the conditions, right? To be reminded of the things that matter. And I think we all need that. So thank you for sharing so much. I feel like this episode is jam-packed of just realness with you.
Yeah.
Not only were you sharing the successes and all the amazing things that come from writing a book, becoming an author, but also the things that we need to work on and things that we can develop and things to look forward to, of course, like a grandson, and
Yeah.
like all the, that's part of life. Like it's okay to put that little book on pause, and it happens. It's okay.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
the other thing I haven't told you about,
Yeah.
which I did, and I'm not
Yeah.
leveraging, is I created a custom GPT bot
Yes.
based on one of the chapters of my book. It's a role-playing bot.
Love
So
it.
it's out there. Anyone on ChatGPT,
Yeah.
Google Love Your Team, or
Yeah.
search on Love Your Team,
Yeah.
and there's a custom role-playing bot on
Yeah.
managing underperformers.
Oh wow.
Because that's the toughest
That's
conversation managers have. And you can say, I want an easy conversation, a hard conversation, medium. I want them to be belligerent. I want them to be passive, whatever.
Yeah.
So and then
And
you
then
do
it
a
kinda
role
plays it-
play,
yeah,
and then it
that's
will
so
score
good.
you and rate you.
That's so good.
And so it's based on one of the chapters of my book.
Yeah.
It's based on the conversational skills that are in my book.
So
And
powerful.
the book was the heavy lift,
Mm.
but actually creating a custom bot is not a heavy lift. It's
Right.
actually easy.
Yes.
And so that's another thing. I could do this training, and then you want to practice, use the role-playing bot.
Here's a
You
module
want
we
me
can
to
use.
coach you
Yeah.
on your role play, send me your transcripts. Or,
It's so
there's so many
powerful.
things I could do,
Yeah. Yeah.
which are
so
just
powerful.
sitting there that I haven't leveraged.
Yeah, haven't leveraged. Not yet.
Yet.
Right. And I think,
Yet.
and that's okay because you were kind of going through a transition.
Right.
Right. And when we go through a transition of like, okay, I should be doing this and that, and I should be thinking about this and that, that's okay to allow that time for those ideas to brew.
Yes.
And say, okay, now that I really want to go in that direction, and all these tools can like sort of support that direction, I think that's actually a powerful thing. That's okay. One of the most powerful things I remember Tucker Max telling me about my second book when I was sort of writing it, and I was like, oh, I'm struggling with this and that, and he was just like, maybe it just needs to brew, bro. Like it just needs to brew. Let it like cook for a while. Sometimes things just need to cook. And he's like, so maybe wait a couple years. And he was so right, because I like now waited, and like now the second book is kind of formulating itself, and all the
Yes.
things that I'm learning are going to be so applicable. Right. So
Yes.
the tool or the direction, sometimes it just needs to brew. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, for other authors out there that are listening to this conversation, don't beat yourself up. It's okay. Like, it's great to have so many opportunities, and that's the blessing of living in
Yes.
America.
Yes.
Right? And it's okay to take one opportunity at a time, and just like kind of open the fruit, and enjoy it one at a time, because I think that's okay. I'm a believer in that, and you got to be optimistic. And sometimes, if we beat ourselves up too much, then it kind of takes the joy out of the thing.
Thank you
know what
for
I mean?
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for
So,
that. So
yeah.
there's a lot more ahead
Yeah, of course.
to capitalize on and
Yeah.
take advantage of. And
Of course.
the other thing is, I have something that the world needs.
Mm-hmm.
We all need more love. We all need to feel valued when we go to work, whether it's physically going into an office or from home. And managers play a huge, huge role in how their team feels, and whether they're feeling great about their job and want to perform and want to do the whatever the thing is, or if they are 1 foot out the door. So I think my message really matters, and it's kind of like, I don't want to rob the world of it.
I don't think there's a better way to end the episode. Seriously, that was well said. It was so beautiful. Helen, you're so right. Your message is important. That's why I reached out to you. I was like, come on, we gotta do this, because what your book is about is it's just real. It's simple. It's simple yet not easy. And love is not easy, though it is simple in a lot of ways. And if we deploy it with our families, with our friends, with ourselves, with our teams, people that we hang out with for 8 to 10 hours a day, like more than our families sometimes, we need to deploy things that really matter to the human essence. So thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate you.
Yeah, likewise. Thanks for inviting me. It's so great to meet you in person
I know.
after all these years.
We did it.
Yeah.
Here we are in the
Love
van.
it.
Hopefully we'll do round 2 soon enough. Thank you for watching. Y'all take care. Peace.
All right.